Hi, this is the third episode in the What If I Didn't Have to Be Ill series, and I'm joined this evening by Judith Sedgeman. Thank you for joining me, and just to give you a bit of background as well. This whole series has just been about sharing. But basically things that people have overcome, and they've talked a little bit about how they've done that as well, but it's just to open up the possibility for people that they may not have to continue to suffer. You know that there is a possibility that it could be different, and I'm really excited about the talk that we're going to have tonight, because it's kind of what I'm fascinated in, just the whole mind-body connection and everything. But before we start talking about that, are you able to share just a little bit about yourself and what you do? Because it'll kind of
well, I what I do right now is that I'm a mental health educator. I'm a psychologist. I have a doctoral degree in psychology, and but I'm a 3 principles practitioner, first, last, and always. So I'm not a traditional psychologist, even though they never mentioned the 3 principles when I was getting my degree. I've been working with the principles for more than almost 35 years now, so quite a while. Goes way back to the beginning. I spent a good deal of time with Sid Banks when I first got involved, and I was fortunate to sort of be among the originators of all of this work. So I consider that a great gift to me, that that I can share some of those stories. I see clients individually. I do groups. I do webinars. I do YouTube videos. I teach online. I do everything I can possibly do to help put the principles out into the world. And I have had a long career doing a lot of different things in the principles over the last several years. So, yeah.
And recently you've just been involved in talks with the Scottish Parliament as well, haven't you, about looking at mental well-being?
Yeah, that was a great honor for me to, and I must say that the Parliament building is an amazingly beautiful structure. I really enjoyed visiting there, but also with the parliamentarians who were very, very open to the idea that the knowledge of well-being, the awareness of one's own well-being, and the ability to sustain one's own well-being would be a great thing to incorporate into any mental health system. And they could really see the connection between the understanding that one could have about, one's own psychology and one's own functioning, and the way in which that would inhibit the development of mental problems later in life. So, they're kind of, in their minds, they're linking mental health education as part of education reform.
Which is just fantastic.
Yeah, it is really amazing. Yeah.
And so for anyone that hasn't heard of like Sydney Banks or the principles, Sydney Banks was kind of the person that, like, he had an epiphany, really, didn't he? And articulated basically how our psychological experience worked, and that's what the principles are, aren't they, behind our psychological experience. And at the end, I'll probably share where people can find more resources, and if you're happy as well, you can share how people can get in touch with you, if that's okay.
Sure, of course.
But that's how we met, isn't it? At one of kind of your group sharings on that, and we touched a little bit on stress as well. So what I wanted to do in this discussion was kind of just share I guess some of that discussion again, kind of how your health used to be is.
Okay. Well, it's interesting to me when people ask that question, because if I had not stumbled into the understanding of my own psychological functioning represented by the principles, I probably wouldn't be here to talk about my health, because I, at the time, was an athlete. I was a runner. I was eating extremely healthy to keep myself fit. I was running a business. I was a mother and a wife. Did a lot of civic work. I had a lot of things going in my life, and I was living in a very high level of stress. So I had considerable health problems. The most notable being, I would break out in these unbelievable hot, itchy, painful rashes whenever it was something big was about to happen. Like if I was supposed to go on stage and speak, or if I had a big meeting with a group of clients or something, all of a sudden I would break out in these really painful, horrible rashes for no reason. And my dermatologist could give me no explanation or no treatment for that. I had unbelievably painful menstrual periods that were so bad that I would actually have to go to bed for 2 or 3 days. I mean, it just was totally dysfunctional. And I also had a very extremely high blood pressure for somebody my age and my quality of life. And the doctor wanted to give me medicines. He wanted to give me, at that time, everybody was taking Valium. He wanted to give me Valium for, to calm me down. And I didn't want to take any of those medicines because, number one, I was kind of like, I'm too young for that. I'm an athlete. I'm a healthy person. This can't be true. I just couldn't compute it. And the other piece of it, I didn't want to take Valium because my success, I thought, depended on my ability to really think clearly and think fast and work hard and work long hours. And I didn't want to slow down. I didn't want to.
So what was that like at the time? Because just sharing it now, I imagine it was quite scary, but also, if you're in that kind of zone, is it that it's just a way of life? So it's like just another thing and another thing.
The thing about it is, most of the people I knew were like me. So it was kind of like stress was the red badge of courage. We were all living on our last nerve end. We were all living in a high level of stress, and you'd go to Chamber of Commerce meetings, or you'd go to, various functions, and everybody would be talking about, oh my God, I'm so tired. I can never get enough sleep. I am so stressed out. I've got so much pressure. And everybody just assumed that was the price you paid for success. I mean, honestly, that was like a way of life among my peers, especially women. There were not that many very successful women. And I also had the added pressure in my life of being the first woman, too, in my community, the first woman to be named to the chamber board, the first woman on the Economic Development Council, the first woman entrepreneur to run a big business. So I had all this pressure in my own head to succeed so that people wouldn't not give other women a chance because I would have failed and they would say, see, women can't do it. So I felt this big pressure to sort of pave the way for other people and to mentor people. I was a terrible mentor because I was like so stressed out. But, nobody noticed that because everybody was stressed out. But it scared me when the doctor, well, first of all, I wasn't happy at all. I was living on fumes and coffee, really. I mean, I was getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep at night. I was way pressured, and I took everything very seriously, and I just wasn't, I was one of those people that I had everything but a nothing, deep down inside. it was an empty feeling. Even though if you looked at my life from the outside in, you'd say, what a fortunate person. She has a beautiful home, wonderful family, great business, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, when my doctor said after, some months of my refusing to take medication and wondering why there wasn't something else he could do for me, he said, the only thing I have for your level of stress is medication. If you won't take the medication, I can't help you, but I can tell you that you're not going to live to be 60. So I'm currently 74, so it's almost 74, not quite, but so I obviously made it, but and right at that time is when I was running a medical practice management business. I had a lot of doctors under contract to manage their practices and their business interactions. And I got a new client, and my new client turned out to be Bill Pettit. And for people who are new to the principles or do not know, Bill Pettit is right now the only psychiatrist, and has been for years the only psychiatrist, really practicing from the understanding of the three principles. And when I met him, I was completely taken aback by his level of happiness and goodwill, given the fact that his practice was not generating income. He was generating billing, but it wasn't getting paid because people in his office didn't know how to do psychiatric billing, and he didn't know how to tell them how to do it. So he had a lot of money in receivables, but not much money in the bank. And most doctors in that situation were angry, bitter, grumpy, upset, looking for a quick answer, ready to blame everybody else but themselves. And he was happy as a clam. He just was, I realize this is a problem. I've got to solve it. I understand you're really good at what you do, so I hope your company can help me. But, he wasn't, that was it. He wasn't worried about it. It wasn't like weighing on his mind, and
It's so noticeable as well, isn't it? When we see someone go through what we perceive to be a difficult situation, when they go through that with calm, it's almost disconcerting, isn't it?
Well, it was for me. It was very disconcerting. I thought he must be on some kind of wild drug. That's the only explanation I could come up with. But, as it turned out, he really was, he also has a great deal of integrity. Over the course of years, Bill and I have become very good friends, and we really worked together a lot, and we're, worked together in university when I was running a program there. And, so we've had a long connection, but at that time, I didn't know any of that was in my future. I just thought, well, at least he's not going to be a problem client. He's nice. And he's pleasant, and he's not going to mistreat me or my staff, which a lot of our clients did. And, but I was still very baffled by how this could be. Also baffled by the fact that he had so many patient files, and he'd been in town for just a little over a year setting up a practice. And, most of the psychiatrists that I was familiar with had far fewer files, and they would see the same people year after year after year after year. And so he had way many files for a solo practitioner with that short a time in practice. And when I asked him about it, I said, where are all these people? You can't possibly be seeing this many people. And he looked at me and said, well, I assume they're having a nice life.
Oh.
And I was so taken aback by that, because in my wildest imagination, I could not conceive of a psychiatric patient having a nice life. Almost all the psychiatrists that I worked with say things like, well, I finally got this one under, kind of managed with drugs, so they're able to function now, and I'm not worried they're going to kill their family anymore. Or, I managed to keep this one out of the hospital, so now she can be with her kids, but, she's got to be on a lot of meds. And nobody was ever talking about quality of life as a psychiatric outcome.
Because is it common for people to keep returning?
Yeah, it is common. Yeah, and with psychologists and psychiatrists. So Bill said, well, I really wouldn't feel comfortable, as much as I need your help and I really want your company to help me. I wouldn't feel comfortable with you working around my practice if you didn't understand and appreciate what I do. which I thought had an enormous amount of integrity for a person that had $450,000 in receivables, a pregnant wife, 4 children, and a rusty car. It's like, holy cow, So I said, well, fine. I'd love to know what you do. I was very curious anyway. I really was extremely curious. So he invited me to sit in on a group that he did for his patients, significant others, and families. Because so often, because that's not an expectation for people that have been in the mental health system, it is not an that they will come out and have a nice life. That's just not a realistic expectation that anyone has. So the families would be very upset because
where it's going and how
could this person, they all thought they were in denial, or they were, they were waiting for the other shoe to drop. They didn't believe that people were really well. And, so Bill did this group to explain to those closest to his patients who were doing fine, what he had been sharing with the patients so that the family could come to peace with it. So he was like doing a public group for the families and friends of his patients so that they wouldn't, mistrust the health of this family member or friend that, was going to have a nice life with them. So, he invited me to sit in on the groups, and that was the beginning of my learning about the 3 principles. And what we ended up doing, because he didn't have any money really when I first started working with him, is that I bartered with him, and I said, well, if you can share with me and my company, my staff, what you're sharing with your patients, if we can find a way to do that, we'll be your students for a year, and we'll do your work for a year, and at the end of that year, you'll have income, and we'll have a whole new life, and everything will be fine, and we'll sign a regular contract. So he agreed to that because it was a great idea, And so we ended up actually making a series of 12 videotapes in my office. I had a big conference room. It was very pretty. And so we had my whole staff, I think we're about 47 people that worked for me, who came to the conference room, and then Bill, talked. It was a 12-hour-and-a-half long tapes talking about the principles and mental well-being and all of that. Which we videotaped. We had a videographer come in, and then we made those videotapes available to the hospital, and then he had them in his practice to share with patients, which made his work easier because, his patients could share them with their families and so on. So that worked out great. And I also had the opportunity, partially because I was managing some contracts that he was working on with other hospitals and so on, and also because he would offer me the opportunity to follow him around when it was possible. Like, he would let me sit in with patients when the patient would agree to it, or go to groups that he was doing if the group was fine with me being there, or go to public lectures that he was doing. So I had kind of a 1.5 year immersion course. And at the end of that time, I was like, oh my God, my whole life had changed. Everything changed. I never had cramps again, ever. The rash disappeared. It just disappeared from my life. My blood pressure went to normal, and has been normal ever since. I mean, last time I had my blood pressure taken, it was 121/72, and that was right before I went to Scotland. So,
that's odd, isn't it? It's like I can speak for myself, but I can imagine like people listening are so what changed?
Yeah, I can tell you
what caused that.
Well, what changed is that I had this realization that, number one, I had a series of insights, but most of the insights led me to realize that I was spending a lot of time thinking about things that had nothing to do with what I was doing. In other words, my mind was going 1,000,000 miles an hour all the time, and it didn't need to be, because the only thing you really need to be thinking about is what's happening in the present moment. and I didn't know that. So I always had, like I'd be in a meeting and my mind would be halfway in the meeting, and then I'd have 17 things going in my head about what I had to do after the meeting, what I should have done before the meeting, the phone calls that were waiting for me to be returning them. And it was pointless to be overwhelmed by all that thinking. Was not necessary. So that was one thing. The second thing was that I took everything personally because I was wouldn't have called it this at the time, but I was really driven by my image of what I should be.
Yeah.
And in an innocent way, because I had, responsibilities. I was running a company. I had people working for me that were dependent on our success. I had clients whose outcomes were dependent on me, financial outcomes. I had, an obligation to all these women that were coming along. So, I mean, it's not like it wasn't justified for me to care how well I did, but it was pointless because it kept me from doing as well as I might have done, because when you're thinking about yourself all the time, that's like having two jobs. You're thinking about what you're doing, but you're also thinking, how am I doing? How am I doing? How am I doing? Should I be doing something different? All of that thought is extraneous, and it just sucks all the joy out of the moment, because you're never doing what you thought you might be doing or whatever. So I had all those sort of self-indulgent, self-absorbed thoughts that I didn't even know I had. And when I realized that was stunning to me, that I was sort of throwing away my mental energy on worry and anxiety about how I was doing. And as a result, I wasn't doing as well as I might have been doing had I just focused 100% on what I was doing. So there was that. And then the third thing I realized is that I was in the service business, and I was always complaining that my clients were unappreciative and obnoxious, and they were always angry when they called. And this came as an insight when I was paying for lunch with my MasterCard, because I noticed that I just happened to glance at it, and I noticed there was an 800 number on the back of the card. And I thought, gee, I've never called that number. And then I thought, well, of course I haven't called the number. The card always works. The only time I would call that number is if I was upset at a store or a restaurant and my card wouldn't go through. And that's never happened to me. But I thought, my gosh, I'm the 800 number for my clients. The only time they call me is when something they either perceive or actually something is going wrong. And of course they're upset because something's going wrong. They're insecure. And it took all the personal out of it. I no longer felt offended that they were yelling, and I realized I had to treat the state of mind and not the problem, that I could handle the problem easily with them if they calmed down. And I stayed calm. So that changed my whole business, because I didn't get defensive and reactionary and, quick triggered to run and try to solve a problem I didn't even understand because they were saying, let's get going, let's get on this. I just recognized their state of mind as being critical to our joint success. Oh. And that completely transformed our business, completely.
It's funny because as you were sharing that, like what changed, and you were like first this and that, and each thing you described, the thinking about everything you had to do, and thinking about how well you were doing, and about the annoying thinking about the client, as all, I could almost feel that all dropping away as you were talking, and it felt so much calmer, and kind of what how we originally got onto this topic when we met was talking about the effect of stress on the body, and even just in sharing that, I could feel like a softening and a relaxing, and even if you didn't know about some of the reactions that were going on, you still get a sense of how much kinder that is, on your physical body. And
yeah,
but I get a lot of people that do have a lot to do that just don't get how you can do it all without thinking about it, without carrying it round, and how you can be your best without thinking about how well you're doing. So it'd be kind of nice to hear what changed for you that meant you didn't have that anymore.
Well, I think there was a lot of subtle change. It was like incremental, one insight after another. But if I were to look back on the whole series, what it really amounted to was realizing that I was making it all up. I'm the thinker, and I'm creating my whole experience. And if I don't like it, I'm in charge of it. I don't have to look around and blame somebody else. And, that's kind of the good news and the bad news. It's like everybody I know that's gotten involved in this work of understanding that we use our power to think, to create our own images and ideas about the reality we're living in, and then to experience what we're thinking. When I realized that, it was almost funny, but it was this moment where I thought, oh my God, it's not my client's fault. It's not my husband's fault. It's not my daughter's fault. It's not my, car's fault. It's not my business's fault. It's me. And at first I was kind of mad about that. Like I had nobody to blame, and then I realized what a relief. If it's me, that's the only thing I have control over in my whole life is me. I can't control my clients. I can't control my car. I can't control people in my life. I can't change the world, but I can change my mind. I can change myself. I can change my state of mind, and I'm in charge of me. I'm the thinker. I'm making this all up. And when I realized that, it was it would be counterintuitive to make up a lot of stuff you don't really need to be thinking about. It was very easy for me to just realize, to be able to laugh at myself sometimes when I get going and go, oh, what are you doing to yourself? That's crazy. Just let it go, or wait for an insight. The other thing that I didn't know, I would have subscribed before I really saw the principles at work. I didn't really understand wisdom and insight at all. So I was kind of a nerd in school. I was academic, and I was, pretty intellectual. And I was in the school of thought where you apply yourself and figure it out. You put all the pieces together and you look at problems and you stare at them until you get it. And when it dawned on me that if you couldn't figure out the first time you tried, you should let it go until you had a better idea. It was almost scary to me. It's like, what if I didn't have a better idea? And then I thought, well, but usually I can spend hours on a problem and I still don't have a better idea. Why not just spend those hours doing something else, And if I still don't have a better idea, well, all right, I can go back to it, And
it is that second piece, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that trust. It's that trust in that if you haven't got a better idea, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay, because you will, or you're a lot more likely to if you quiet down. And I never understood quiet. I never, before that, I would have said, that was for the hippies or the people sitting in mountainsides and hammocks. And I really did not understand the incredible power of a quiet mind. I just did not understand that. And as a result, I was competing with people that were just like me. So I had the advantage because I was smart and hardworking and willing to not sleep much. But basically, when I calmed down and I really sort of began to realize that I was going about everything completely backwards, that I needed to get rest, I needed to have more peace in my life. I needed to reflect rather than react to problems. I needed to treat state of mind as a critical sort of foundation for everything that I was doing. I found that I could do a lot more, but it seemed like less. if I looked back and thought, what have I accomplished this week, I would be overwhelmed and amazed by how much I'd gotten done, how many things I'd done. But at the time I was doing them, it didn't seem like I was doing that much.
Yeah.
Because I was just doing one thing at a time, with full heart and soul, and not spending a lot of time, keeping score or adding up or worrying about how I was doing or anything like that. And it's so funny how my life and my work and my business grew, everything improved. I just can't even begin to tell you. My whole life completely changed so much for the better. And everybody could.
Oh, you're breaking up now, sorry.
What's going on?
You just broke up a little bit then, but I think you were saying that it looks strange to everyone around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me a moment. Yeah, people would say things like, have you been on vacation? Or you look really good, or you look 10 years younger. What's going on? And, somebody even asked me if I'd had a facelift, and I said, no. It's just when you relax and when you're at peace, it shows. It just shows. And for some reason that had a soothing effect even on my clients. I think people are drawn to a good feeling. Yeah. Feelings are contagious, and so there's no doubt that bad feelings are contagious too. But I think when there's somebody present in a meeting or in a room who is in a good feeling and is in a calm state of mind and is operating from insight and trusting, that the thing is going to work out, people are drawn to that state. And when I was on the faculty of the medical school at West Virginia University for 13 years, and my department chair used to say to me, I just love it when you come to meetings. And he said, well, it always seems like it's so much quieter. And, he never understood why, but it's really just that people would start to argue, and it wouldn't make sense to me to do that. So, I'd say something distracting or something, to kind of lighten the tone, and, there'd be a little shift. And I wasn't planning anything like that. It's just kind of how I am now, where I didn't used to be that way. I'd be right in the midst of it before, like, all right, let's fight this out. I would never do that now. It just doesn't make sense.
It's so funny because how your being is always having an effect, isn't it? It's without you even fixing problems or going out and talking or actively doing things, just how your being is having a knock-on effect on the things around you. Yeah. It's so amazing when you see that, and you get more of a sense of, if I only concentrate on what I'm doing and where I am, like not in a selfish way, but if I'm doing the best that I can, or I'm in the best place that I can be, then everything else is gonna work out so much better.
And the other thing is, I think people can feel, I think we talk a lot about the health of the helper when we're talking about the principles, but the health of the helper is just seeing that you're only one thought away from a whole different reality, and seeing and having faith in your capacity to go to quiet and get an insight or get direction, get a feeling for a different way to go. And knowing that if you can do it, everybody can do it. So, I can't take other people's agitation and upset seriously anymore, because they're only one thought away from a whole different world. So I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to argue about it. I don't have to talk them out of it. I just have to, just keep loving them and seeing the health in them and speaking to that health, and not getting distracted by their temporary thought storms. And as a result, it makes dealing with so-called, what we used to call difficult people is a piece of cake, because there are no difficult people. they're just people in a different state of mind who are kind of caught up in thinking right now, but it'll pass. Yeah. So it changes the whole human equation. When this starts to sort of, I know within my own company, my whole staff, as they started to pick this up, people stopped running into my office in tears because some client yelled at them, or they just their lives calmed down, and their reactions to things changed, and their ability to be compassionate to people that were upset in business changed, and their sense of humor kind of blossomed. They could see the sort of the cosmic joke in the whole thing. Like, this person is they're always upset on Tuesday morning when such and such comes in the mail. Then we just know it's coming, so it's all right. And and then when you're in a good state and you're able to be lighthearted in the presence of others, it brings that out. It is an attractive force, goodwill and love and compassion and all the beautiful feelings that come with a quiet state of mind.
Yeah, and just so like we're clear, it's kind of because where we started was like all the health problems you had and everything. Like you didn't change anything externally there, did you? Like it's not like your life suddenly got less hectic and you had less to do, or you suddenly started like meditating for hours so that you were calmer or anything like that. It was just an internal shift.
Mm-hmm. And the only thing I really changed, I was already leading a very healthy life. Like I say, I was a runner. I ate very healthy. I was very, I was interested in my own fitness and well-being in that sense. But I did start sleeping more. That's the one thing that did change. And I don't know if I told you all this when we had the group, but that came from a crazy insight too, because I was driving home from one of Bill's groups actually, and I was listening to the radio, and this story came on the radio about how the Interstate Commerce Commission in the United States was changing the rules for truck drivers so that you could not be a long-distance truck driver. You had to keep a log, and the logs were reviewed and checked by your company, and you had to have at least 12 hours off for every 12 hours that you drove. So you had to rest, and you had to have at least 8 hours of sleep. And, I couldn't remember the last time I'd ever had 8 hours of sleep. And I'm driving along and I thought, oh my God, I'm trying to run a business, manage all these clients' problems, deal with an emerging teenager, be a good wife, be a community leader, do all these things. And I'm not even qualified to drive a truck, And I realized that, sleeplessness is a really bad thing. It's not a good idea. So that is one thing that did change from the standpoint of my lifestyle, is that I started getting more sleep. Now, I still don't get 8 hours, but I get as much as I need. I don't set an alarm either. I just wake up. But I just started going to bed at a normal time, as opposed to finding something that I needed to do before I went to bed. I was always like running around the house going, oh, wait a minute, I didn't put the laundry away. Oh, wait a minute, I didn't do this. Oh, wait a minute, I've got to do this. And I kind of got over that. I thought, well, I can do it tomorrow too, or never do it, and nobody would notice. So,
I was going to say, there's always something else we could be doing.
Yeah, as somebody said, nobody who's really effective and productive dies with an empty in basket. So there's always something to do, and there's the rest of your life to do it in. So I did. That's the only thing I could say that really changed. I was still running, still eating the same, still going to the gym, still, leading a very busy life and doing as much or more as I ever did. But I got more rest, and I felt terrific. I felt calm all the time. And when I would get upset, I recognized it as temporary. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying, and the physical symptoms stopped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything just, I forgot about it. It all went away, I remember going back to my doctor for a checkup, and he looked at me, he said, "Oh, you must have started taking medication of some sort." And I said, "No, I didn't." I said, "I just realized the power of calm, that I was thinking too much." He was shocked. He must have taken my blood pressure 6 times during that visit because he kept thinking he was getting it wrong, because it just went down on its own.
I think that's a beautiful way to end, on the power of calm.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful thing. Well, thank you very much, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share.
Yeah, thank you. And if anybody's wondering kind of what we've just been talking about or how you reach that level of calm, how can they get in touch or like where should they look?
I have a website, and so my website is www.3 spelled out THREE dash, not a dash, principles, PRINCIPLES.com. So www.3principles.com is my website, and I've got links to a lot of other websites on my website. I write a blog. I've got a lot of things that I've written and published on my website, and it's all free, downloadable. I'm not selling anything on the website. So if you'd like to visit the website, please feel free to do that.
That's brilliant, and I'll put a link on under the video as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for spending that time with me and sharing.
All right, it's been a great honor. Thank you very much.
Lovely to go through that. Thank you.
Okay.